you very much. Good afternoon. I hope you had a good lunch and nicely relaxed and sleepy. So let's see. I want to talk today about accessible document classes. And we have to go down, I heard? Yeah, okay, so that's the talk. So what do I mean by an accessible document class? Well, basically for this purpose of the current talk, it's any class, document class of LaTeX, that if you add document metadata on top, it still compiles, first. Second, it does produce an accessible document, PDF document. I'm not going to go into what is an accessible document here. Let's say one that complies with the UA standard, which doesn't necessarily mean it is accessible, but it's the best that we can do sort of automatically. And what does this mean? Technically speaking, it means that you have to add a little bit of code at the very beginning. We have seen that yesterday and today already several times. Basically a single line or several lines if you write them like this, in which you say there's a certain amount of metadata, and we introduce this command to distinguish between legacy LaTeX 2E, to epsilon, and a new LaTeX. So in some sense, this is similar to what we did in 1993 or 4, where we changed from document style to document class, and therefore every document that used document class were a new document and used new features. And in the same way, we intend to use document metadata as an indicator of things that have more functionality back to certain standards that were not there in the past and so on. So this is an important bit, but the idea is that's the only thing you have to do. So that's what an accessible document class should be. You add this and it works. Examples. Well, the standard classes are getting a check mark at the moment, so if you use those, they work. We heard about LaTeX Talk or LaTeX Talk, which is the replacement for Beamer, because we just looked at the Beamer code and decided we don't want to make it accessible. We rather prefer to rewrite it from scratch with the same kind of interface, but we need more power.
Sorry about that.
That's not very... That was not much, was it? Was this from the... Yeah. Maybe we should turn it off if we are not using it. That could help. But still, it's... Let's see if we learned something. Yeah. Upside down or not upside down.
Hey, I got to the right way.
Hey, first go. Cool. Okay.
Sorry about that.
All fine.
Cute.
That's fine. Okay, and then we have, actually, that's not quite true, but more or less true. The Japanese classes actually fulfill that too. It's not true in the sense that after adding this document metadata, some of the layout is no longer correct. But in terms of accessibility, it actually works. And we have 2 or 3 others. For example, the MIT thesis class, and those are also accessible. So far so easy. What's the problem? Well, the problem is this is about 20. And we have nearly 900 compatible packages, which is kind of a different level of accessibility possibilities. And that's a serious problem if you want to make accessibility sort of out-of-the-box standard. So what's the reason for that situation? Well, first of all, we just don't know. So when I say 20, it's 20 we know about. There are many, many classes which are not on the official archive, CTUG, and they are maintained by publishers on their websites and so on. So we don't really know the real number, so it could be a bit better. But that's one problem. The second problem is that class design involves layouts that LaTeX wasn't actually being made for initially. So there are quite a lot of classes that try to achieve things for which LaTeX doesn't have really support, or did have support in the past. As a result, the authors of those classes went through a lot of gymnastics to make things work, and that is a problem because it falls flat on your face if you try to turn something into an accessible document. Starting from misusing structure, like a list or a table, to position things. Yeah, that's fine if you look at it, because you don't see that this was a table or a list if you hide the bullets. But if you turn that into automatically structured PDF, then suddenly you get a table announced when in fact there is no table whatsoever at that point. So that's a problem. And then the other problem is some of those classes are even older than myself, so to speak. And I'm in the game since, I don't know what. So we have stuff that really originated in 2009, so 85 we learned, and is then layered and layered and layered. New people came on, fixed something, not by fixing it really, but by putting some software on top that masks the problem. So those classes are sometimes really, really brilliant if you want to be an archaeologist or something. Yeah, another way to look at it is these class files. Can you classify them? Well, some of them are basically standard classes, article, book, or whatever, and then put a little bit of cosmetic changes on top of it. Those classes are actually of the nature that we can more or less assume that they are already accessible now. This is fine. Not so fine, at the moment at least, are classes that went on and used extension packages that help you with making good layout decisions. We heard about title sec, which is not compatible yet. We heard about enum item, title talk. There are a bunch of those extension packages which are there to give you structure. And at the moment, those classes would not be accessible. Then we have classes that are built on the standard LaTeX classes again, but make really heavy overrides. Typically in the front meta part when it comes to title, page design and so on. So there's a lot of sort of low-level coding going on. And typically those classes also use a lot of additional packages that they load for one reason or the other. Some of them, most people wouldn't even know why they have been loaded at a time. It might have been important, but these days there's much better stuff, but they are still loading all this kind of historical baggage. And that is, again, something where without manual work at the moment, those classes wouldn't work if it comes down to accessibility. So this is the situation. Here's the one more. Haha. We have at least two very big and comprehensive document classes. One is Memoir, and the other one is the ComaScript set of classes, which are quite different from the standard classes in the sense that they have a lot of interfaces built in. So in some sense, they do what these extra add-on packages are supposed to do for the standard classes, like bringing you good interfaces for design, but they have their own setup. And again, they are not accessible at the moment. So that's the situation. And I mean, there might be a few more, but this is really sort of the majority of what you find out there, in our opinion. So what's the solution from our end, from the LaTeX project? It comes in two parts. The first is we want to provide a template-based customization solution for class design. And this is not a new idea, as most of the stuff that we are doing, it takes about 20 years to make it possible between invention and I just said something earlier today. I gave a talk in 2011 about architecture. So that should be about in 3 or 4 years ready to actually do it. So this is from 2000 about the Oxford meeting. I think I gave a talk there. Or Vancouver, 1999. Yeah, so this is what we want to do, and it should cover all this and maybe more. So everything basically that a typical class is trying to customize, define, should be covered by a template-based system. And if you look at this, and there are some aspects, some parts of it where already in the current LaTeX 2 Epsilon, there are some sort of customized interfaces around. So everybody knows about start section. That's one of the sort of really nice one that you find in every class, basically. There are a couple more, and I listed some of them. The problem with those is, first of all, they are not covering everything. They're covering only various special aspects. And secondly, none of this is very consistent. So it's not easy for somebody to make a new class because the things are all sort of done in different ways. Sometimes you have to do some coding. Sometimes you have to do some parameter settings and combinations of those. So that's the situation. What we want to have is, as I said, a consistent interface throughout. And this is the important part, the whole tagging machinery would contain accessibility support, tagging support out of the box, which means the moment you use this, you produce a class that is tagging aware throughout. So that's the goal. And the second part of the solution is to say, yeah, we have all these classes out there, so we have to do something about those that are already in existence. And the second part of the solution is therefore that we want to have these important customization packages like enum item, title seg, title talk, whatsoever, geometry, and so that they have their interfaces emulated so that the class that is using one of those packages with the interfaces that these packages provide is automatically using behind the scene the new mechanisms, the new template mechanisms, getting the accessibility therefore for free, and still work, provide the right same kind of layout. So that's the idea. So this is kind of the sort of the current set of things where we're looking at. The ... means there might be a few more coming that we decide it's important to emulate as well. So, and the third part of the second part is that we want to do the same to the Coma class and Memoir classes. In other words, we will going to emulate their interfaces or provide direct support within the class the way they are written now. And therefore, once that happens, they are tagging aware as well, whatever the way it is done. So the current status of all this is, well, out of the 10 big blocks that I listed earlier, the list and the block environments like center, quote, whatever you have in list environments and so on, they are all template based and automatically producing tagging aware results. The enum item package is emulated, I would say, to something like 2. This is not a good.
I got it. I have no batteries.
Also
You can press and hold. Okay, there you go.
seems to work. I don't know what I pressed or if I pressed anything. Anyway, the enum item emulation is largely working. 2/3, I would say. Well, there are certain things in terms of it is all working when it comes down to user usage. So if you use enum item in your document and you adjust a single list or something, that is all covered. What we haven't covered completely is making design changes through the enum item interface. There are some aspects that are still open. But this is something that is going to come as well, so this is well underway. The heading command templates are in the current LaTeX release. There's still some edges, so I wouldn't say it's completely finished, but it's working nicely. And the title seg emulation, which would be part of the second part of the solution, is scheduled for this summer, so this will come soon. Yeah, I'm also working on templates for the float area and the caption and sub-captions. So the idea is that the caption package and the sub-caption package are basically getting an equivalent replacement in a template-based solution, and then their interfaces for the legacy side being emulated as well. So this is the situation as of today. But the more we gain experience with using templates, the easier it becomes. I mean, we're finding things like, I don't know, last week I did the AMS classes and changed all the headings to the new template solution. And we found one case where the current templates don't handle it very well. So we either have to extend the template or we had to work around it. Those kind of things will be still sort of a learning curve. And as far as the Japanese classes are concerned, what's it called? Gyodori? The heading? Gyodori. Okay, whatever it's called, I had to look it up. The first thing that was given to me from the internet was it's a Korean restaurant. I thought that can't be quite right. It was hit number 1. But when I gave it a certain tip saying I'm interested in typography, it was very much picking it up, and then I got the information what this is. So that would be a case where we would provide an additional template because that is a design that is well different from let's say the traditional Western designs, and so it wouldn't be good to build it into the sort of main template, but rather provide a second template that you could choose alternatively. So those are things that are sort of getting extended over time, and yeah. But making then this kind of thing accessible is very trivial because the machinery is already doing that for you. It's more like you have to do a little bit of layout design on the template level. So that's good. So how does this all help with the legacy classes? I think you guessed that already from my claim. Basically, if a class is using one of those extension packages or using interfaces from the LaTeX 2E kernel like start section and so, it would automatically become accessible because we emulate those interfaces in the new design, and that includes accessible output being generated. So that's the nice part of it. Here's an example. It's taken from some class out of TUG, and it had some, it loaded the title seg, and it loaded some title format, title spacing thing, and to produce a chapter. And that would then automatically be accessible because title format and title spacing would be translated, emulated by the template mechanism internally, and the parameters would be passed to the template system, and then things come out accessible. Here is an example of the sort of high-level LaTeX to Epsilon interfaces, and they also come partly for free, but not all of them. Can you guess which one would be a problem? Anybody? No? These three. And why? Well, very simple, because there's no structure whatsoever inside. It's basically saying, to make a caption, write some code. And so, of course, every class has its own code, and they are not necessarily very close by. So even with some sort of guesswork, heuristics, you can only get very few cases handled automatically. So those would need to be turned into using the template solution, and there would be some work on the class design to make those possible. As an example, for example, the start section, which is very nicely emulatable, there's a counterpart which is called secdef for chapter, which is again one of those things where the codings has no structure whatsoever. It just says, to make a chapter, define two commands. And then what the commands do is up to the class. And we have an emulation which, because many classes copy from each other, so there is a certain chance that you get even then something out, which solves the solution for classes to a certain extent if they are legacy classes. And this is why the Japanese classes work. They use secdef, and we are then hijacking that and replacing it with something accessible. But of course, the layout is not quite right. That's where it falls down. Okay, so that's a point where you can't go all the way through. Well, this is the wrong way around. Was there a text down there? Yeah, need adjustment. Okay, fine. And then we have the memoir class, and we have the comma classes, and there the situation is in some sense the same as with these things like title seg. We have to look at the interfaces of those classes. What are what are they doing? How are they doing it? And then we either have to emulate these interfaces, or we have to work with the class developers for comma and for memoir, and put some accessibility sockets directly into the class. Which of the two is going to happen, or a combination of both, is something we have to see. But technically speaking, that's by now just work. It's not a real technical problem anymore. We are beyond that stage. So yeah, they will be automatically accessible, but only once we have done it. But okay. And what's the advantage for the new classes? Classes that are either completely new or are rewritten from scratch? Well, basically you end up with a very consistent designer interface. For a typical document element, say a section or a list or your keywords in the title space or whatever you have as a typical document element, what you do is you select a template, you build an instance from this template by putting values to the parameters of the template. You may have to build a document level command to make use of the instance, and then you're done. The benefits, I think, is clear. On one hand, there's little to no coding. The class design becomes a graphic designer exercise to a large extent. I remember when I did the first LaTeX companion in 93 or 2, I think we started, I got a huge spec from the publisher with all kind of information, like you have to have this amount of space here and that amount of space there, and you do this font size, and that was really, really sort of impressively clearly done. But of course, turning that into a class that then produced the doggy book was a challenge and was a lot of coding, because none of that was possible to handle in sort of standard LaTeX like book class or book style at the time. It was more or less before 2E. Now it would really just translate those values into corresponding parameter settings of a suitable template. So, as I said, no or little coding effort. Of course, if you have a very, very specific document class with features that are not found typically in any other class that is already in existence, there may not be a reasonable template that covers it, which means somebody has to sit down and write a corresponding template, which would then be the coding effort. So there could be some. But then we have Eric for doing it for his classes, and we are fine. Yeah, and the other important bit is people change their mind about the layout, but now we are not layering software on software on software. Over the years, we are changing values in the templates if we want to change the layout of, or if worse comes to worse, we select a different template because they require a completely drastic change. Yeah, and as far as accessibility is concerned, it comes to our goal, which is that accessibility is not an afterthought, it's already baked into everything. So that's what Arush is asking for. We are not really at some point talking about making things accessible. We are just talking about producing documents. And they are accessible. Here's an example. It's not from a class, it's from a package. And I just selected it because it happened to be during the week when I wrote the slides, somebody approached me about the poem title not being accessible in that package. So the poem title is producing a title for poems. That's what the package is all about. So what we are doing is we are selecting a template from the heading templates to produce headings. There are 2 at the moment. I selected the display template. We call the instance poem, and we select a bunch of parameters. Now, if anybody is trying to use current LaTeX and follow this and tries to do it, sorry, the parameter force unnumbered was added and is not yet in the distribution. So I'm a little bit lying in terms of this is not possible in the current LaTeX. It's only possible in the current def format, and that is not yet distributed. It will be distributed after this conference, because everybody's on vacation or on this conference. The whole team is not there. Okay, that's one thing to say about this. The second is normally you wouldn't see something like this before V space. You can guess what this means. It's the vertical space before the heading. You would see a value. Here I have a lot of an indirection. I have a lot of parameter as command names. And the reason why it is in this case is that this package had offered these parameter names, these command names, as a means of adjusting things. And so to manage the old interface, that's one way to do it. We just kept the names and put the names into the template as the template values. So you have this kind of indirection here. But in a sort of more modern way, you would probably just see parameter values, and then you can change the parameter values if you want to make adjustment to the layout. Yeah, and the second part is, of course, you want to have a heading command, which is this poem title, and you want to have this heading command having arguments the way LaTeX users are used to it, which is in terms of LaTeX headings, you should accept the star, you should accept an optional argument for the table of contents, and you should accept the main title, the title of the poem. And to do this in modern Lingua thing is you declare a document command, which is poem title, which has 3 arguments. The S stands for star, Boolean value, true or false. The second one, which looks a little bit odd, but the important part is this uppercase O is an optional argument with a default value of being empty. And the third is M for mandatory. And this funny thing is our addition that we came up to make accessibility work nicely and at the same time extend the configuration possibilities in LaTeX. We want to have basically every bigger command or environment to have an optional argument, which is a key value list. So this key value list allows you in the document to make adjustments to the layout or to some aspects of the command. Now, for commands that don't have optional arguments, it's very easy. You just add one that's upwards compatible. If there wasn't one and you have an additional optional argument being put into the command interface, it wouldn't hurt. The problem are those commands like headings, which already have an optional argument, which is just meaning, at the moment, an alternative TUG title and also at the same time a running header title. What we are doing is we're turning this optional argument into a key value list, but if there are no key values in the argument, which we identify by there is no equal sign which is outside of mathematics. So there's a little, we look at the thing and deduce that this is not a key value argument because there is no equal sign anywhere. Or if there is one, it's only inside math. And if that's the case, then this key name is used to receive this optional argument string. So if you have a normal LaTeX command and you put optional argument and put a TUG title in, just some text, it would be received as short title equals whatever you wrote. But if you have optional a key value list put in, then the key value list would be used. So in other words, it becomes always a key value list. Either short title equals something or whatever key values you as a user put in. So that's the way to handle this or extend it to a key value argument. And then we saw this earlier as well. We have a command called parse LaTeX e heading, which expects 3 arguments the way LaTeX typically has its heading arguments. So the output of a star, an optional argument, or empty, or a title. And it manages those and then calls an instance and passes whatever is necessary to the instance. So basically all the headings have this structure as on the top level in the new mechanism. So now I have long talked, so I have to be given up. This is very strange. Okay, never mind. So how do you make... It's probably telling me I'm talking too long, I should finish.
You got like 8 minutes.
Yeah, I know. So what's the...
Want batteries?
I don't know, it can't be that the case. Templates have mandatory arguments. Those are the inputs coming from the document. Then we have the goal to take these inputs and turn it into some output. And to customize the output, a template has keys that you can put values to customize the layout. That's basically the idea of a template. And we have what we call template types. The template type defines what kind of inputs are the what kind of inputs are expected from this for this template, and what should be generated from them, sort of in a rough speaking. So a template for footnotes is for footnotes and not for headings, even if it has the same number of inputs, for example. So this is what the template type does. Oh, wow. And what did you do? The main idea is that 2 templates with the same template type can be exchanged. So that gives you the flexibility that if you have a run-in heading, you use one template. If you have a display heading, you use a different template, but still would produce a heading. Expect the same type of arguments. That's the idea. So defining good templates is a problem. You have to decide what are the inputs for this template. That's really what it comes down to it. And you have to find a balance between overgeneral solution and practicality. And that's really not easy. Question to the audience here. What are suitable inputs for headings? Anybody?
Title.
Title? More?
The TOC title.
Okay. And numbered. Yeah, this is what everybody thinks of because that's the way LaTeX does it. Three inputs basically. Title, TUG title. Sorry?
Position.
Position
Centered or left.
is a layout. It's not a document input. You wouldn't put it as a doc. I'm talking about document inputs. What is coming from the document?
Sometimes, in some situations, people want to put some special artwork after the title.
Okay, good. This is what I came up with in the end, after several tries. So this is going fast through. Key value is basically we want to have every template to be adjustable, so we have to have one argument to accept layout changes sort of for one-off. This is the stuff that we all know about, except that we have TUG title, running title, bookmark, and so separated out, because they are not necessarily the same. Currently in LaTeX you can only do one. Finally, we want to have something like labeling, so we want to pass a label string. And then there are two more. A heading might have a subtitle. A heading might have something like artwork or a quotation or something. And you could probably come up with more, but this is what we kind of settled on as being sort of a broad basis.
What do you mean by subtitle?
Subtitle is that the heading's title is structured into a main heading text and a subtitle. It's not very often the case, but you could have these kind of things. You see, this is 10. I can break it. See, that's the point. We have 10 arguments, but TeX only allows 9 mandatory ones. So one solution is we are just having the last one. We are just having the last one being receiving many arguments. So hopefully those that we are not using so often. So that's the idea. You have to do a little bit of work. And basically, parse LaTeX heading generates all 10. I mean, it takes the 3 that LaTeX standardly provides you with, but it generates all 10 for the rest of the processing. Most of them as no value by default. But that allows us to have an interface where you have a quotation coming with the heading automatically. Okay. The other big problem is key names. They should be easy to understand, they should be consistent, and that's very, very difficult. And this is my answer. We are experimenting. Every new template we find out that we did it wrong in the past. So there will be some changes coming along in the future as far as what the templates are doing now. Here's the selection. I have to be very fast. Basically, we use hyphens for longer names. We have something like V space for vertical space or H space and margin for the horizontal ones. We call everything decals when we have declarations like font changes. So you have something like something decal, something else decal. So title decal, number decal, and so on. And so you can guess them once you have this kind of standard. And the last one here is also very, very standard. We call something format, and it expects to have one argument. So it receives the title format, and it does something like putting a box around it or whatever. You can then put some function in that does it for you. And here's another one which I'm currently working on is providing sort of some orders. So you can say this is for, think about theorem title. Theorem title has a number, a title, a note, maybe a punctuation, some parentheses, whatever. And they are vary from theorem type environment to the next. And to make this manageable, you have a key that basically defines the order. And I'm out of 1 more minute. Here are the 2 templating approaches that we found being sort of the way one can go. One is monolithic. You have a single template that implements everything, and you have 50, 60, 70, whatever many parameters to do all adjustments. Has some advantages, easy to understand. You can look it up, what it can do, and you put the stuff in. Has some maintenance issue because all the code needs to be replicated in each and every template. That's the problem. If you want to make layout changes, you have a lot of change to make. For example, if all your headings get a little bit more space on top, you change hundreds no, not hundreds, 6 or 7 templates to make the changes. So that's a certain sort of downside to it. The other is coordinators and workers. You have a template which organizes the stuff, and it calls other instances, and they do the work. So gives you much more enhanced layout consistency, which, for example, all the block environments have the same vertical spacing, typical way of LaTeX. I mean, quote and lists, and they all have the same vertical spacing. So if this is separated out, then you only have to change one instance to make the changes bigger and smaller and not on 20 environments. So that's the way LaTeX currently does it as well with list I and list II. Yeah, again, you have up and down. And yeah, what is really better is not clear because both have sort of challenges and advantages. And basically, it's maybe a matter of taste, whether you want to have a big bowl with everything inside or a lot of little dinners. This was from this last year, Japanese. You asked how it was. Very nice. Okay, so 45 minutes. So no questions.
Oh, not the other mic? Okay. Okay.